Today is an important panel, besides all the others, of course, but for us as a food cluster, we are bringing the knowledge, the experience from important clusters and important people that really they navigated this journey, and we wanted to share with you all these experiences to start setting our mindset in where are we going from this starting point that was presented this morning by His Excellency Bintuk. So just to start with our colleagues, cluster practitioners and experts, I wonder if you can start very briefly introducing yourself, telling a little bit of you to all the people. And at the same time, the first question to open our conversation is very briefly tell us a little bit about your journey in clustering process. Because we are here in the UAE starting this journey, but all your insights, all these stories can help us to imagine how is this journey in a clustering process. So maybe Paola.
Yes. I'm very honored to be here. My name is Paola Giavedoni. I'm the lead of global collaboration at a cluster which is called Foodvalley in the Netherlands. I have a background in food science and technology, a PhD also in food biotechnology, and I spent 25 years of my life in the food industry. The last years they were with a non-profit organization, an organization from the European Commission, and the last 2 years with the Foodvalley.
Thank you. John.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. I am the managing director of the Basque Food Cluster. It's a Basque organization. We are about 150 companies from all the value chain, food value chain of the Basque region, right? I have been involved with the food industry during the last 25 years, and well, I'm willing to explain my experience here.
Great, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Good day from Australia. I'm Mirjana Prica. I'm the Managing Director of Food Innovation Australia Limited. We're a national agri-food cluster, and I also represent the Competitiveness Institute TCI network globally, which is a global organisation around clusters. There's over 500 members, 9,000 practitioners across 111 countries, and we know how to build ecosystems. In terms of what I do, our cluster represents the whole of the food and agribusiness sector in Australia at a national level, and we are continuing to build on our 22nd ranking on the Global Food Security Index of how do we continue to export what we grow and produce in Australia, which today is over 70%, but also how do we take advantage of the clusters that are scattered across the sixth largest country in the world, which has diverse climates from extreme heat deserts to Mediterranean climates where we can grow practically anything all year round. So I'm really delighted here to share with you and discuss how the Australian government invested in setting up the national network of clusters across the country. Thank you.
Great. So as we started this conversation, I just wanted to trigger this initial point on share with us more or less an illustrative picture of how was this journey. We are starting, as I said before, and there are many challenges that we are trying to tackle. Sometimes some of our companies try to focus on only short-term challenges and they lose the big picture, or even we are still looking for our vision in the food cluster. So why don't you initially share with us this experience from you when you were doing these first steps in this process? I know that you have 20, 30 years on navigating these food clusters. So that's why maybe taking you back in time and remembering these initial steps. So share with us how was this trip from there to here in a very nutshell, please.
Yeah. I'm very pleased to tell you that actually next week we are celebrating our 20th anniversary. So our food cluster is 20 years old and started in the green agricultural area of the Netherlands, about 1 hour from Amsterdam. The place is called Wageningen. The history is really coming from an initiative of the Regional Development Agency, of the University of Wageningen, and of a provincial, let's say, provincial organization. So these three, they build, let's say, what has now become the Foodvalley. At that time, the reason was to support the local industry, the industry that they were coming, and they wanted to connect and establish in the region. After this, there were several developments, and the Foodvalley developed continuously and adapted, becoming a more international organization. So still there are strong roots in the Netherlands, strong connection with the province, with the region, with the university. We are actually part of an ecosystem where the biggest company, the big corporates, establish themselves there, as well as the small startups. So we have Accelerator, but we have companies from all, let's say, the ranges and sizes. What is important is that there is a very interactive type of activity that we have among ourselves, university, governmental, and industry. Where we are now, we are a cluster with about 450, let's say, partners in the network, divided in 5 clusters. So actually you call them 5 communities, because it is important for us to focus so that the companies that have an interest in a specific field, they come together and they share. Our approach is definitely a systemic approach, and we really act on the practical level. We initiate initiatives, indeed, that can then be scaled. So we help companies to support in this way the system.
Fantastic. I'll come back to the initiatives, because we are starting this work with a portfolio of 30 initiatives at this stage in the food cluster. But these initiatives will inspire, maybe you can share later on, some of the initiatives you are working to help us complementing the portfolio we are developing here. John or Mirjana?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we started about 15 years ago. This year we were the 15th year. And at the beginning, I remember that we were about 12 companies that they meet each other, and they thought that they should do something else, because at that time, companies used to do their business on their own. So they found that the challenges are global, so they should collaborate, right? And we were lucky at the time, because in the Basque Country, there was running the cluster policy for about other 15 years. So there were another industrial sectors that had that knowledge. So for us, it was easier to start that journey. At the beginning, okay, all people wanted to collaborate, but the challenge was how to collaborate, because they didn't know each other, and they found each other as competitors. So we spent about 3 or 4 years creating the atmosphere so they can know each other, they can be confident. You have to create those spaces where they can speak with security, right? So for us, it was very important at the beginning to spend that time to create that atmosphere. Once you get that, you can put on the table your challenges, your problems, and they realize that the problems are the same. So if you talk and if you share what you can share, of course, you can go faster. You can go. You can do the things better, right? So this is a globalized sector. So the size of the companies, of our companies in the Basque Country, are very small, right? There is as well an ecosystem from the government and from the universities and technological centers, and you also you need to know each member what can offer to the sector, right? So the next thing was to understand very well how can we gather together, and also the next point was to to know very well what the needs of the companies are, what are the real challenges that they have, so that you have to listen to the companies.
Interesting.
And in our case, in Australia, we had a really interesting motivation. We're very similar to the UAE in the sense that we have 5 states and 2 territories, and each of those jurisdictions has their own governments. Then we have a national government that's superimposed across that, and therefore there's legislation that cuts across food industries that supply. But secondly, historically, as I mentioned earlier, we are known for growing agricultural products, and we're a major exporter. As I said, over 70% of what we grow and produce is exported. And there was a real lobbying from researchers, from government officials, and also from the industry to have a focus on value adding and how do we capture some of that value in Australia. So the federal government 11 years ago set up the organisation that I lead. We don't like the word clusters, unfortunately, but they set up an ecosystem that was going to take into account the whole food system, where we would not only look at what we grow and produce, but they're the major inputs that go into producing and manufacturing the food and beverages that we consumed. So that was a real driver for us, and it was that common purpose, that shared purpose at the national level that we try to get alignment across the different jurisdictions, and even within those jurisdictions more local, because that's where a lot of the raw materials are, and that's where the manufacturing is on a local place. And so therefore we try to get that alignment, and we are now 11 years going strong. There are challenges, but we'll talk about some of those later on. Thank you.
Great, great. I'm thinking on especially after these points you are sharing, what was the role of the leaders on the cluster? Because we are here trying to promote the leadership for private sector to take the leadership of the process. How was your experience on that? Because I know that, and we know that in some other countries, government is taking a very top-down approach, trying to organize everything and to put all the resources behind the cluster, but sometimes it doesn't work. So how was your experience, and what was the government role, and what was your private sector leaders' role, taking this cluster to move to another stage? Very quickly.
Well, yes. I'll start. In Australia, we found that the big leaders, the big companies, the large multinationals, the Mondelez of the world, the Nestle's of the world, the George Weston Foods were really important because they were really relying on making sure that we could ensure we had a food system in Australia. But more importantly, they also wanted to help a lot of the SMEs in our country. And we have 180,000 businesses in Australia, and over 90% of those businesses are small to medium size. So they don't have the economies of scale and resources. So they really recognise a lot of the larger companies really lobbied hard to help pave the way. And what was the second part of the question? Apologies.
The leadership.
That was the leadership of the industry. But secondly, the role of the government was really important, because the government, when they backed it, they provided not only the funding, but they also gave the industry confidence to actually invest in some of the initiatives that we were instigating, which is really important.
Yes. What was the experience in the Basque country? Because I know the government played an important role, bringing Michael Porter early 90s and setting a national strategy. We are trying to set a national strategy for clusters here in the UAE, but what was this interaction between the government and your leaders in the sector? Because I know that your culture in the Basque country is to collaborate, but you have to bridge public and private sector as well. So this is part of the process we are trying to set here as well.
I think that the role of the government is important, at least at the beginning, because they are pushing the creation of the association, right? But I think that the leadership of the association has to be from and for the industry and for the food value chain, right? And the problem is that companies want to do things, but they don't have the time to do that, right? So I think it is important to have a structure in association with a manager director like us, So we are 100% thinking about how we can develop the association, right? And I think that the creation of a motivated team is also very important. And the next point is that once you have to have your own strategic plan. Now we are in our 4th strategic plan, so the strategic plan helps you to understand where you have to focus your effort and where you want to reach at the end of that period, right? So for us, it has been very helpful to have those different strategic plans, and we have evolved for in different periods, right?
Okay, what I understand is this is the 4th strategic plan. We are here in an early stage. We already have a high-level strategy, and we are moving in the next stage as the UAE food cluster to develop our first stronger strategy with a definition of a vision, all this process, which is coming next year. But at this point, we are in an initial level. The important point is that it's an evolution of the process. It's evolving. It's an organic process. It's not that you set only one strategy and this will be forever and ever. We as a food cluster, we need to be adaptive enough because the market is changing, the situation even internally as a cluster, the leaders, the situation in the internal market is changing. So our strategy as cluster will be adaptive enough in order to help us success in international markets and also here. You have any experience on that? Did you have after 20 years?
Let me tell you a few things that for us are key. The first is that it is very important, for example, what we experience, our independency. So being independent, although we are supported by the different organizations of our network, is something important. The second one is work with who we call the game changer, the regime players. So you need to understand your ecosystem. You need to understand who are really the organizations, the game changers that they are really supporting you and want to be the first. And the third thing, another word, we call the pioneers. So really the pioneers are the organization, the industry that wants to work with us. Together with them, 5 years ago, we built and we changed slightly the strategy. So we moved from being a network organization to a food transition organization, really involved in the transition and bringing impact for the sustainability of the transition. So this means also that our way of thinking has changed. An innovation became a responsible innovation. And the people who are clustering with us, who come with us, they want to think together to solve what we call the collective barriers, the collective challenges. So if you think in this way, we develop our, let's say, very simple approach that we call a practical approach. Because our actions are very small, but in a very well thought situation, for example, of the value chain. And we want to bring these seeds that are successful cases that can be scaled with the time. So this is the philosophy.
Fernando,
yes.
Can I just add in Australia, what we did two things which I think were really important in the early days. First of all, we built a vision, but what we more importantly did was we actually mapped the food system in Australia. We actually mapped all the subsystems that actually influences the overarching system, from the research system, from the manufacturing, from agriculture. And what we tried to do was really understand the linkages between those. We found that our overall direction didn't change, but over time, the different subsystems changed. For example, we had some unprecedented events like bushfires, floods, and all of that then impacted the ability to supply and manufacture and disrupted the supply chain across the whole of the country. So I think understanding your food system is absolutely critical, and what are the weaknesses in your system, which is what you need to address. And a lot of our programs try to address those, but what we found was the industry captains or champions were really important. Why? Because industry listens to industry. They don't listen to, they love to hear from government, they love to hear from researchers, but they respect a peer from industry. And that was really important, was that, because then those people that were sitting on the fence weren't joining, all of a sudden could see as we're starting to deliver programs, they all jumped on board, and then we started to get the momentum going. So I think understand your food system and understand where you need to focus, because in the early days, you can't do everything. Time is precious, and so is the funds.
Great, great. So, thinking on the portfolio we already have on initiatives, because we use our initiatives as you already did in your clusters, as an excuse, as we always say, an excuse to convene the people to start working together, companies from different backgrounds, different size of companies. They end up working around an action initiative, and this is the initial step to start building the connections and start making these nodes inside the cluster. Can you share with us, just to keep inspiring our cluster members, with some of one or two initiatives that come to your mind that could be helpful to strengthen innovation, to strengthen, the food sector, that those change maker initiatives that you consider something that you can be proud of, to share with us, to start getting some flavors on, well, this could be the ideal portfolio 2.0, where we should go as a food cluster, not only focusing on resolving or tackling challenges in the short term, thinking on something a little bit more ambitious as you did in your clusters. If you have any of you one or two ideas that you can share, this would be fantastic for our cluster members.
So the first thing is that we are covering 3 fields. One is the protein transition, and I guess you are familiar, especially in Europe now, the shift between animal proteins towards plant-based, or let's say non-animal proteins. The second one is circular agriculture, which is the area of reducing food loss, but also converting the food waste into something more valuable that can be reintroduced in the food system. And the third is food and health. You know very well the connection between food and health. So for us, it's critical to help companies, industry, but even if you are working in food service, to create products that are healthier. So having said that, I would like maybe just one example. We work, as I explained, in a systemic way, so with players that are all along the value chain. In this particular case, we work together with farmers. A group of farmers decided to embark in a new type of protein crop, the edamame. So it's a bean, it's a kind of soybean, which is particularly rich, but is also very good for the environment in the way how it grows. This edamame is present on the market in the Netherlands at the retailers, but it is imported from China. From next year on, these farmers, guided by us and supported by other organizations, I have to mention also, for example, banks, bank in particular. So the second retailer, is called Jumbo, has announced that they will buy these beans from the local farmers. I think this is still a small initiative, but very significant for the way how we move forward.
Great. So initiatives are impactful, not only from the size, but also we need to consider impactful initiatives where they are helping us as a cluster to connect our stakeholders.
Yes. Perhaps that's a great segue. Thank you, Paola, and thank you to Fernando. So in Australia, one of the challenges that we had was how do we engage the research community with the technologies and the capability that they can have to really tackle some of the challenges that these businesses have, and particularly because our companies are very small, they actually don't know where to go, but they also don't have the resources to engage with sometimes some organisations. So we created a program called the SME Solution Centre, and that was really geared towards encouraging businesses and researchers to work with each other so they can create solutions that they otherwise would never create. And that's the magic of clusters, is that research provides the really value-adding solution that businesses' in-house capability may not be able to create. And this solution was really brilliant because what it did was it helped introduce researchers from universities and research organisations across the country to businesses, but also it exposed businesses to new capabilities that they didn't have before and new technologies to create some fantastic solutions for their businesses and create new products and services for their sector.
Great.
Yeah, in our case, we realized during the years that for the innovation, the way our companies deliver their products to the market was focused on the product and on the process, but not considering the consumer. So at the end, we found that the consumer is the one who gathers together all the food chain, right? So we must have the consumer at the earlier stages of the innovation. So we are trying to change the mind of the way the companies do their innovation, and putting the consumer at the middle of the process, right? And this for us is a very dramatic change because you maximize the opportunities you have to deliver the products to the market. And on the other hand, we have a lot of regulation, legislation. So that is a very big issue for us as well. We need to help the companies to understand what this legislation is applied for them, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to be for one hand, helping the companies to do that innovation, and on the other hand, we are trying to help them how to understand and implement that legislation, right? So yeah. It's a combination of the two things, and it's not easy to deliver.
That's great. Yes, Mike.
I have another example of a program where we also recognise that big companies can learn from small companies and vice versa. So we did a Seeds of Change Accelerator with Mars, which is a large multinational company. And what they wanted to do was work with startups in Australia to help them get access to the expertise by providing some internal capabilities within Mars, and potentially also be an acquisition target for Mars as well. But what was quite interesting, there was 4 companies that won the competition, and we got to work with senior executives across Mars. And one of those companies is Grounded. They're now in New York, producing cheeses made from cauliflower. But what was quite interesting is that Mars said, not only did we help these small businesses fast track and accelerate their commercialisation, but we also learned that as a large company, we became the Titanic. We could not steer the ship fast enough, and we forgot how to be agile and open to innovation. So it was actually a learning from both perspectives. That was a really great example of, you think a large company, large multinational company, has all the in-house capability, but you realise that sometimes their structures prohibits them from being really agile and adaptive to the marketplace.
Fantastic, and we are navigating, believe it or not, or most of these challenges here as well. So that's why it was very rich for us to get all those insights, and just to being conscious on the time, just to a very final round of pieces of advice that you can share, or a quick message to share with our starting and new cluster members on this journey, what they should see in the future, what they can expect from this, just to close this panel, but just something to inspire them, and for sure a positive and motivational message, but we want them to trust and believe that this journey is really, I'm very passionate about this, but really this is something that will help the country to change the food sector. So let us know what's your impression and what's your message, each of you, to all these cluster members in the UAE.
Yeah, I think that the first who will join this cluster are really the most inspired organizations. So my advice is that go ahead with your ideas, build something that is small, and bring some clear solution and success cases, and all the rest will come because it will evolve if you are successful, even with small examples, all the rest will come.
Thank you.
I would say that you must be patient, you must listen to the companies, you must understand what the ecosystem is, and you must keep on and hard work.
I think having a shared purpose really unites people, and I think finding that shared purpose that you can't do on your own is really what drives a cluster, and from that you build the relationships, the trust, and that leads to other great things and longer term investments. But the most important thing is you've got to back your people. It's the people that make the difference. It's the cluster leaders, they're the ones that network across the ecosystem, they're the ones that build the trust, and they're the ones that make it happen, not the shiny technology which will follow, but invest in the people and you'll make a difference in your country.
Well, thank you so much. For all that are interested in getting more details on each of these three experiences, after this panel, there will be a specific presentation of each of them in the food talk area, where they will go into more details on this experience, this journey, but also they will share their challenges for us as food cluster to keep learning and getting more knowledge on how we can improve and develop in a more successful way this food cluster that we are launching in the UAE.
Wait, before you conclude, you've been granted a few more minutes if you'd like to open the floor for questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes?
Yes, okay.
Congratulations.
Yes.
So 2 to 3 minutes for you. If you have any questions, please, to our experts, this is a unique global perspective. We'll get a microphone coming up for you. Yes, and then, right. Thank you so much.
Hello. I'm Shahid Zia from Pakistan. We are working with small farmers in Pakistan, developing small clusters of 100 farmers in each cluster. We support them for 3 years to build their capacity to produce the kind of crops that we want them to produce and share with the other farmers, and together they can market their products. Like we are introducing quinoa in their farming systems, both for the food security and for their income security. And so far we have developed 15 clusters of 100 farmers in each cluster, and we are adding 5 clusters every year. We are looking forward to see how we can link their sort of production to the markets where the demand for quinoa and other productions coming from those clusters. They are being certified these days under the Regen Ag standards also, and a couple of thousand other are being trained for producing the organic produce. So my question is that how we can get these initiatives linked to the similar ones somewhere in Europe or here in UAE. We'll be very glad to link their produce to the food industry here. We can link those the experience of those farmers with those farmers who are ready to see and replicate those experiences here.
Good.
Thank you very much.
I can try to answer because even among clusters we are starting to get organized, and this is very interesting because this multiplies the power of a cluster. So we are just starting an initiative which is a global food alliance, which is bringing together European clusters, but also worldwide, especially connected with the Far East Asia, Southeast Asia, because of actually it's the spin-off of European projects. So my advice is probably to try to connect with this type of organization or with this type of alliances.
I'm happy to just add, It was great to hear about what you've done, and congratulations. Growing new crops and convincing your farmers to grow new crops is always a challenge. I suppose the question I ask is, when you embarked on the journey, you must have had a customer in mind. And John, you mentioned customer. Yeah. Customer is so important at front of mind. So the question is, who were your customers that you think about as you embarked on growing your production capacity? And then it's courting those customers in those markets and understanding what are the requirements of those markets, because obviously there's sanitisation, there's also possibly certifications that are required when you're importing products. So I think that would be my suggestion, and I'm more than happy to connect you within the Australian ecosystem if required.
Yeah,
By the way, sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, I think that's the point. That before you start producing, you must have in mind that who is going to be your client, or what need you are going to cover with that production, right? Yes. So once you have that, you can build the next steps, but not the otherwise.
Exactly. So just want to clarify that there's a UAE First Pavilion where all these experts, they have a specific space where you can come and ask questions there. They will be there these 2 days to answer your questions and continue this conversation as well. Mr. Saleh.
First of all, thank you very much, Fernando, for a great panel discussions. As all of you went through the experience of establishing clusters, go through all the challenges, and make it, standing today in front of us, giving us your experience. I would ask one advice from each, which would be the most important advice through the experience you went through for us, who's now with the teams and the guidance of Fernando, leading the cluster economy of the food sector. Only one most important advice from each.
Do you want to go? I'll start. A great question. If I think about the experience in Australia, I would say you don't wait for government to back you. I think it must be industry-led. I think industries, government political cycles are short-term, and the political cycles means they can change funding programs, but the opportunities around that shared purpose could be so valid and profound. And if I look around the world where clusters have been successful is where it's been really backed and driven by industry. So I think industry must drive it and don't wait for government, would be my one advice.
I agree. And I would also say that you must create trust. All the actors in the cluster, they must trust each other, right? But it's not an easy way. But if you want to make next steps, I think it's the main base. You must to create a trusty association.
Yeah, I want just to complete and say that indeed industry has the driving seat in this. What we consider ourselves is to be orchestrators, so to work behind the scenes and to empower this organization, this industry, to work on themselves and then to show indeed these success cases.
Can I just add one more thing, which I think is important? This takes time. If you think you're going to do it in 3 years, stop now. You need to have a long-term vision, a long-term strategic investment, and because it takes time to build a trust. It takes time to build those relationships. And all the clusters in Australia that we supported, we backed the people, and following the people, they've now all got large infrastructure investments, but it's taken them a journey, and some are going more than 10 years, some are going for 5, 6 years, but it takes time. So don't be impatient, have a long time perspective, and I think you'll get there.